Okay, I was born and raised down just 50 miles east of here, down by Watauga in South Dakota. And then I met my wife at high school, and we got married in 1962. And then her mother was kind of sickly, so they moved to California to get down on the lower elevation. And then we took over the farm bought the farm in 1966. So we've been there ever since.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it cattle, mostly crops, or mix of the two over the years?
The last years we was mostly cattle.
Okay.
And we had, a couple thousand acres of cropland, but we mostly just produced wheat and then hay and feed for the cattle.
Okay.
Cattle was my main love.
Your main love, yeah. I can relate to that. My dad, when he came home, he planted all the fields back to native rangeland because he says, I just really didn't like just going around in circles. I couldn't do that all the time.
Well, there was a lot of that land that should have never been broke up in the first place, and putting it back to grass is a good thing.
Right. And then when was your place homesteaded?
Carol's dad moved out here in the early 40s, I think about 1941 or so. And it had been not farmed for several years at that time. It just left go because, there was in the 30s there was no crops.
Right.
And so he bought it and then he improved it.
Okay. Okay. Now, you were talking about how you got started in 1966 was your first year, right?
Well, I worked for him for 2 years, and then I bought the farm in 66.
Okay. So 1964 was kind of when you first dipped your toes into it. Mm-hmm. What advice would you have for young producers that are wanting to maybe come back to agriculture, or they're making a decision about what their future holds? Well,
on short term, the biggest challenge I see for them is it's inflation right now. And in 1980, inflation not the inflation, but the interest rates hit 20%, and we paid up to 19% interest, and it killed us. So you probably want to keep your finances under control there a little bit, and not get in too deep, and try and lock in long-term interest rates and that kind of stuff.
Not just thinking about the crops and the cattle, but thinking business savvy as well.
Yeah. No, in the 50-some years that we farmed, there was only actually 3 years where we didn't get any crop. So that isn't going to kill you as quick as some other things, because there's crop insurance and different things that help you out in them years,
Right.
But there's no way to make 20% interest on a large loan.
Right. No.
You're going to go backwards.
No. Well, and I always think it's really incredible, all the producers that did make it through the 80s, because there was a lot that weren't able to.
There was a lot of them that went out. Yes. They sure did. We had a lot of neighbors that are not there anymore.
Right.
And some of them hung on for a few years and then still went under, and that was a sad thing, to see. You hate to see that. But
kind of along the same lines, we were just talking about challenges, but what about changes over the years from when you first started, you came into agriculture, to when you, now in 2021, almost 22, that's kind of crazy to say.
Yeah, the biggest change I've seen really is all the small farmers are gone, and the bigger farmers, due to the fact that they have so much better equipment now and bigger equipment, and they can handle so much more and do a lot better job than what we could at that small machinery. And that's probably the biggest change I've seen, and it wasn't much fun to be out on a real cold day on an open tractor. I remember trying to wear fertilizer bags to try and keep warm.
Oh no. Yeah, what was the trick to try to stay warm?
So now, heated cabs and air conditioned cabs, and it's clean, and it's so much better. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll still go home. My parents ranch over by Amadon, and I'll, help my dad feed, and we'll go break ice and things like that. And there was one time where, we went and chipped ice, and then he just went in bare hands and took all these ice chunks out and tossed them over his shoulder. And I just kind of, it's like, oh, I can't even, oh, no, I never, like, I looked at him and I was like, how can you do that? I mean, you're so much tougher than I am. And he's like, yeah, no, you have an office job, Hannah. You're kind of, you're kind of wimpy. You're getting soft on me.
Yeah, it's different. When you get older, and you get used to it, I guess. Kind of know how to handle it with the experience.
Thicker skin.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, you were saying how you prefer the cow side of things. Do you have a favorite calving memory, or one that you kind of look back on and chuckle a little bit?
Well, one of the things that happened with them that I thought was kind of interesting is I went out into the pasture one day, and there was a young cow calving, and the calf was stuck at the hips. And I was going to sneak up on her and help her, and she got up, and there was a creek there, and she swam across the creek. The calf disappeared under the water, and she came out the other side, and then she dropped the calf on the other side, and the calf was still okay. So, so that was kind of unusual.
Yeah, I don't think that happens real often.
No,
Does it?
It was once in a lifetime for me, anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
One time we go around and we breed cows and everything, and my dad was going in to breed this heifer at this place, and he gets this weird look on his face, and this other guy that always would come with us breeding cows, he was like, John, come check this out. And so, John sleeves up and goes in and kind of looks at my dad, and he says, I think she's calving right now. Like, that's a nose and a face, I feel. And I mean, of course, this heifer, it's not even a heifer yet. We're just breeding them. She's not big enough to squeeze out a calf. And it was an impromptu C-section. Luckily, we kind of had everything that we needed to do it. And they just opened up the side of the chute. And we did that. And I was like, well, how often does that happen? And that heifer was really lucky that we were there that day.
Yeah, sometimes they'll breed real young. Yeah, we've had that happen too. Before they was off the mother, before we weaned them off and get bred.
Right, very fertile.
Yeah.
Well, what about, you said you did a little bit of farming, not too much. Do you have a favorite, harvest or planting story that kind of stands out?
Well, the good years and the bad years kind of stand out, and the rest of them just kind of flow together, and we've had some real good crops, and then we had some failures, and I much preferred the good crops.
I think most people do.
Yeah. But then so many times on the good years when you had good crops, then the prices were down, so you still didn't do real well sometimes. But 80 and 81 stand out in my mind really, because there was, no matter what you done, you didn't get a crop, But nowadays with the farming practices we have now, some of the other years would have been a lot better. But yeah.
You said it was in the 80s that you couldn't really do anything right?
80 and 81.
80 and 81.
We just didn't get any rain. Some of the crops never come up. We planted some corn on the field, and it came up in the low spots, but on the hilltops it never did come up. And it only lived for a short time, and it died on the low spots too.
Oh, that'd be so disheartening.
Yeah, it's not easy to do. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Right.
Agriculture is always a challenge, but that's part of the fun of it too. It's not the same thing every day.
Is that what has kind of kept you going over the years, or what kept you going over the years?
Well, what kept me going is I had to feed my family.
Yeah, that's really good motivation.
Yeah, we had a large family, and So we had some help with the kids. And, yeah.
Were they good helpers?
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Maybe that's the question I should ask, because I distinctly remember that learning curve and bending the rake when I was about an 8th grader, you know, learning how to work with machinery. And to this day, I swear, I thought I wasn't going to miss. I was going to miss that pole. I was going to clear it. It was going to be fine. And that definitely didn't happen. And
yeah.
oh, my poor dad. But all of us kids, we each had kind of a whoopsie moment, and I guess it just teaches you patience.
One of my daughters still mentions the time she had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go bailing with me. And then we got up there and it was too wet yet. So we had to sit around and wait for it to dry a little bit. But it was too dry the day before, so, you know, but
Right.
yeah, it makes memories.
For sure, yeah.
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 Yes, it does. But
Well, what about making memories? How about as a community? Are there any moments or stories that come to mind as you think about communities coming together and supporting each other over the years?
well, of course, the latest one would be Mitch Miller, and that was great that everybody went and helped him. And we had some other cases like that earlier. And then one of the things that I thought was great is when, after some of the bad storms, people in town, there was a lot of elderly people that couldn't get around, couldn't get their food, you know, and people with snowmobiles went and to the grocery store and got stuff for it, took it to them and helped them out that way, and whatever they needed, you know. And everybody really worked together as best they could, you know. We didn't have any looting or anything like that, like they have in the big cities. People helped each other rather than take advantage of the situation, you know. But
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite parts about small communities.
yes, it is. Yeah.
We really do come together and we help each other out. We might drive each other crazy sometimes because you know everything about everyone and where they were last week and their family heritage and everything. But, you know, when push comes to shove, they're going to be there. And
Well, it's kind of like being married, you know. Sometimes you drive each other crazy, but in the end you pull together.
Right. That's a good, I like that. Okay, well, how about, what are one of the worst storms that you've been through?
Well, in my career, we've had 4 really bad storms where most anything that was outside was dead. You know, 64 was the worst one, and 66 was very, very bad. And we was lucky in them storms. We had everything inside, but in 64 we lost one cow that walked away from the bunch, and she froze her leg way up to her hip, so we had to destroy her. But the rest of them stayed in the barn and close there, and so they was all right. But then in 84 we had a really bad storm, and it was sleeted so bad that I tried to go outside, but as soon as you went outside it'd freeze your eyes shut, and put on goggles, and then you couldn't see through the ice right away. And so for 3 days on them storms I never even got to the barn. And but if I would have got to the barn, there wouldn't have been anything I could have done anyway. Probably best I stayed away and not chased them out of the barn, you know. But yeah. And then I don't remember exactly what year it was, but we had a bad blizzard on the 23rd of April, and we had yearlings that drifted, and they got on the railroad tracks, and they drifted about 12 miles on the railroad tracks. They would look pretty rough. Took all the hair off the back of their ears, and their rumps were bare, and some of them died, you know, and got piled up in a fence corner and froze to death. That was a terrible thing to see. You know, you remember them things.
They stick out to you.
You know, old cows will kind of stick around the farmstead, but young cattle will drift quicker than old cattle. The old ones are smarter.
They've learned, they've been around a time or two, natural selection.
Yeah, there's no place to go, you know. Yeah.
Were there certain things that you did to help prevent them from drifting, or?
Well, they was on a place that I was renting just about a mile and a half from home, and I couldn't get down there. Cross country, there was just no way to get down there. And it was late, and I'd been out farming already, and then that late storm come up, and there, by the time it come up, it was too late for me to get down there. And so they left the windbreak and walked away. Yeah.
Right. So even when you do try your best, sometimes things just don't come together.
Yeah. The creeks were all flowing already and everything, and it snowed so hard and blew so hard that the cattle walked right across the creek, across the snowbanks, and never broke through. So. Yeah.
Well, okay, maybe it's going in a more positive direction a little bit. What are some favorite holiday family traditions that you had over the years?
Oh.
Christmas is coming up, New Year's is coming up.
Yeah. Well, like I say, we had a large family, and so we had Christmas at our house most of the time. And now that we're getting older, this year we're not going to be home for Christmas. Carol said that's the first time in 59 years that we haven't been home for Christmas. So, but no, outside of that, there's traditions that I can think of just offhand. But
okay, so you're not a lutefisk family, or you didn't go Yule blocking?
I will eat lutefisk, but it's kind of not my favorite food. Lefse is good. My daughter makes lefse, so that's good.
That's fair. That's
yeah.
fair. Yeah, my dad's side of the family, we always eat lutefisk Christmas Eve, and then my mom, she's from more of a German background, but she is a really good daughter-in-law and everything, because she'll eat lutefisk with the best of us, and she learned how to make lefse, and she does that really well and everything. And so I don't think my dad could have asked for anything more, could have he?
New Year's Eve, Dad would always make oyster stew.
Yeah,
and we enjoyed that. Yeah.
Well, those are the questions I had and everything, and I just really appreciate you sitting down.
Yeah.
Hopefully this wasn't too nerve-wracking for you.
No, it's okay.
I think he looks the best on video because it's so zoomed in on just you, so you feel very prominent in frame.